Hello everyone, my name is Zane and this is a beginner's guide for C++ to show you how to incorporate if statements into your programming. So what is an if statement? An if statement is basically a block of code that if its conditions are true, it will execute the block of code, and if it's untrue, it will skip it. And if the next condition is untrue, it will skip that one, and so on and so forth until your entire if statement has been completed. Now here, before we get started, I'm going to break down what we have on the screen already. That way everybody's on the same page. First two things that you'll see in the gray and the orange, these two things here are what we call preprocessor directives. They basically are billboards that the program will drive past and it'll tell it what to look out for. So the IO stream tells it we are going to be using the cin command and the cout command, and that if it sees those words, not to think that they are variables, but instead know that we are trying to communicate with the user through the command prompt. The next thing we have is the include string. If you see it, know that it's not an undeclared variable. It is the type of data. It's a data type that we're trying to use. And then the using namespace standard is std short for standard. That is just a way to prevent any kind of nomenclature collision. If they make a new namespace called like math and they have a cout from math and a cout from standard, those two won't collide because they are in different namespaces. And then obviously the last thing we have is the main function. Return type is an integer. The name of the function main, we don't have any parameters in there, and the return line here just basically like writing the end at the very end of the function. So a good example of when you could use an if statement would be planning a wedding reception. So if you were planning out like seating and you wanted the groom and the bride's family to be sitting right up front, and you could basically make a program and send it out and have everybody fill it out, that would give them a seat or give them a table at least. So we can do that through an if statement. So we'll do a couple things first. The first thing we'll want to do is initialize a variable called last name, right? And then we'll prompt them to enter their last name so that we can give them a corresponding seat. Please enter their last name. And then we'll grab it from them. Last name. Last name. Okay, so now we have our prompt here. We've initialized our variable. We got that. So if we run our build, it'll have us put in our last name. So obviously we don't have anything else set up right now, so that's all it does. But we got our prompt for our last name. So let's make our actual if statement. So if, say, the bride's last name is Smith, we'll write this out and then we'll kind of explain a little bit. Okay, so this is the syntax of a if statement. You start off with if, and then you put a condition in parentheses. The condition is going to be checked to see if it's true, and then assuming it is true, it will execute the code. So if they put in for last name, if they put in Smith, it will run whatever is in here. Now, right now, I just have it as an output to say you are seated at table 1. But you could have it call functions there. You could assign different variables. You can do, it will execute whatever is between these curly braces. It will do that, assuming this is true. But what if it's false, right? What if their last name isn't Smith? Say that you have one of the groom's family members that's filling this out. Well, then we need to make what's called an else if statement. And again, we'll fill this out and then kind of explain it a little bit. So an else if is a kind of a secondary block of code that will execute if the first one is false. So if you have somebody filling this out, one of the groom's family members, like we said, if one of them is filling it out and they put in their last name as Jones, then obviously this will be skipped because this is no longer true. So it will go down to the next code, which is this right here. So it'll check them. It'll say, oh, okay, our last name is Jones. So it will execute this code. But what if you have somebody that is neither the bride's nor the groom's family or whatever, and you just need kind of a catch-all? Well, that is where else comes in. Else is anything other than that input. So if they put in Williams or something like that for their last name, then it would default to this because these first two conditions would not be true. So it will come down here. We'll put a message for them. A sit blank, just not at table 1 or 2. So we have our kind of primary if statement, our secondary statement, which is an else if, and our fallback, which is our else. So let's run our build and we'll see what it looks like. Please enter your last name. So let's do Williams, because that's not one of our two names. You may sit where you like, just not at table 1 or 2. Cool, great, works perfectly. Now let's try it with Smith. You're seated at table 1. Perfect. So this will allow you and to organize a lot of different things and only run particular bits of code if you have to. And the cool thing about this too is you can actually make multiple else if statements. So if you had another group of people that you wanted to do, you could do this, and you could do just as many of those as you want. So now that we have a good understanding of how an if statement works, we can take it one level higher. We can make nested if statements. So what a nested if statement is probably exactly what it sounds like. It says an if statement, and then if one of the conditions is true, so let's say the last name is Smith in our example, then we can also check to see their age and make an if statement that may sit them at the kids table if they're under a certain age, or we'll seat them at table 1 if they exceed that age. So let's do that. So we would first want to initialize a variable for age, and then we would need them to put it in. So please enter your age, and then grab it from them. And now we can make our nested if statement. So we would come down here, and we'll just do it for the bride's family for now. We'll make another if, we'll make our another condition. So if age is greater than 12, then we will sit them at table 1. And then obviously if their age is not greater than 12, it has to be less than or equal to 12. So we could absolutely do an else if and say age less than or equal to 12, and write this. At the kids table. Let's be excited about it, right? All right, so we could absolutely do this and it would work fine. We'll run it now. New name. Oh, sorry. Sorry. It's a Smith, right? Please enter your age. We'll put 10 since we want to test that one in particular. See at the kids table, great, you know, that perfectly works. But it's also somewhat unnecessary because if you think about it, if their age isn't more than 12, it's less than or equal to 12 anyway. So you could literally just make this an else. You don't have to make it an else if. All right, so that wraps up our bit on if and else statements. There will be some links to resources in the description if you're interested in reading into more or getting onto other topics in C++, one of which will be cplus.com. It's a fantastic website with a lot of resources, including forums if you have questions. There will be one for Microsoft Visual Studio, as we talked about before. That way you can download this program and write on your own. And then also a link to the Cherno's YouTube channel, which is where I learn a lot of stuff. And he does a lot of really good stuff, especially with C++ on there. So jump on there and see if you can't learn something as well. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I did. We'll see you guys next time.